severe drought is threatening the lives and livelihoods of Somalian herders. United Nations workers are scrambling to help in some of the hardest hit areas.
Michika local government area in Adamawa State, northeast Nigeria, was one of the worst hit communities by the Boko Haram insurgency. The rebuilding process begins as indigents celebrate their return home.
And as China begins its plan to end the domestic ivory trade, Kenyans say the commitment has already had an impact. Africa 54 starts right now.
Hello, I'm Joker Rogers at Channels Television here in Lagos. Stay with us in the next half hour as we go from Nigeria to Somalia, Kenya and beyond for stories from Africa. And I'm joined by my colleague at the Voice of America in Washington.
Well, thanks, Jockey. I'm Vincent McCory in Studio 51 at the Voice of America. Let's begin this week with a look at the rebirth of an area in Adamawa State, one of the regions where militants caused a lot of destruction. Jockey has that story for us from Lagos.
Well, yes, in Michika local government area of Adamawa State in northeast Nigeria, almost 90% of locals have returned, having lived away from their ancestral homes for years. While much rebuilding is yet to be done, indigents are still celebrating their successful return. Channels Television's correspondent Freedom Haslon captures some of the colorful moments.
Respite from Boko Haram insurgency in parts of Nigeria's northeast has allowed members of Michika local government area in Adamawa State to go about life as they knew it. Destroyed infrastructure, including school buildings, are a reminder of the devastation left by the militants. But that's not the only area of their lives that was affected. While living as refugees, they give up part of their identity as a culturally rich society. As a way of reclaiming that rich past, the community holds the Kamwe Cultural Day to celebrate the return of about 90% of its members.
We don't have, if at all we have, little or no person in IDP camps, Michika people. We are all back home. That's what shows that we are back home. If you go to the villages, to the hills, all the locals are back. So that is the impact, to tell people that we are back and we don't want to remain in ITP camps. So the essence essentially is to tell people that, look, we have our culture, we have our traditions, and we must come back to observe those things.
Various cultural groups comprising men, women, including the elderly, perform their dance and music in celebration of the peace they now enjoy in their community. Part of the event is the presentation of a book which captures the origin, history, and culture of the people.
I want to showcase to the world that, look, our people have come back. And the only way I can show to the world that our people have come back is to organize a cultural day. So I want to showcase to the world that Michika is free and fair. People are happy. Whoever wants to come to Michika for business, Michika is ready.
Although normalcy has returned to several other communities in the region, there are concerns that the terrorists may still be a threat. The expectation is that the security forces will continue with measures to completely rid the region of the insurgents.
You're watching Africa 54. Nigeria's government recently confirmed that Boko Haram leader Abubakar Shekau is still at large, despite claims that he'd been killed by troops of the Nigerian army. Now, Defense Minister Sudan Ali believes the militant is likely to be hiding out in the Sambisa forest, one of the Boko Haram group's last remaining bases in the northeast. Let's get more on that from security analyst Chidi Wani, who joins us via Skype from London. Welcome to the program.
Good day, thanks for having me.
Right, give us an assessment of the war against insurgency so far.
Well, from the perspective of the Nigerian security forces, you can say that the war is progressing in a relatively well. So far, if you break the war down into maybe two different sections to the north around Lake Chad, to the north of Maiduguri, and also to the south of Maiduguri around Sambisa Forest. And then all of that encompassing the Cameroonian border and Cameroon itself. You'll see that there have been two operations, more or less, that have been going on, while not simultaneously, but almost in sync with each other. So to the north, the MNJTF and 8th Division have been pushing fighters back from Lake Chad to try and clear that area and allow people to return to their homes. At the same time, 7th Division has been clearing out the Sambisa Forest and the areas around there. Likewise, in Cameroon, the MNJTF has been fighting near the Nigerian-Cameroon border, the Mandera Mountains, using air and ground forces to try and push out Boko Haram fighters. So from the perspective of the Nigerian forces, all these operations are going successfully and have been able to push Boko Haram forces away from, particularly densely populated areas. But on the other side, what you are not seeing is comprehensive defeats of Boko Haram fighters. So you're not seeing Boko Haram being defeated, in huge numbers.
There are concerns that the militants are regrouping and they may begin to launch attacks yet again. Do you share these concerns?
I would say yes, that definitely the insurgents are going to regroup and they're going to attack. Now, if you look to the north, you will see that the pattern of fighting is very different from what's going on to the south. So al-Banawi's fighters have been attacking military posts and ambushing Nigerian forces, but doing it in a much more professional manner than is happening down south. There are also the interactions with the civilian population to the north is also more professional, if you would put it that way. They are not given to wanton attacks, murdering without due cause. They are actually organized in a much more disciplined structure. So whilst they steal from the local population and they tax them, at least they try and give them a manner in which they can seek redress. But meanwhile, if you look at the Shekau areas to the south of Maiduguri, Sambisa, Kalebalge, LGA, near the Cameroon border, all these places, you see that it's a much more chaotic scene where they attack villages, burn villages, displace people, and then cause a lot of confusion. But all of this put together, what it tells you is that neither faction is ready to come in, is ready to negotiate, is ready to end the war. They're both building up their forces and their resources for the next phase of the war. In an insurgency like this, there's no quick fixes. There's no magic bullets. It's very hard, long, tiring, boring work for the soldiers who are out there. It's very simplistic things like constant patrolling, reaching out to the civilian population, providing basic services. And you can see that this is what is happening in some places where the army is being replaced by the police. The government is now stepping in to provide certain basic services, rebuilding, providing water sources, providing seeds for farmers, things like that. So by doing all these things, you build up the resilience of the civilian population, and at the same time, you allow the friendly forces to, the ability to move around and to interact with the people, and deny freedom of movement to Boko Haram or the insurgents, and provide a general air of security. All you're going to see in the next coming months is going to be more and more offensives in the same way that we've seen over the past year. But hopefully, you will also see a return to a pattern of normal life, which is the best indicator that you will have of success.
Security analyst Chidi Wani, thank you so much for your time today on Africa 54.
Thank you for having me.
Well, now, Africa's biggest refugee crisis is getting bigger by the day. Now, thousands of South Sudanese are crossing into Uganda as violence and food insecurity ravages their home country. From northern Uganda, VOA's Jill Craig has more.
The buses keep rolling in, bringing more and more South Sudanese from border points in northern Uganda to refugee settlements, their new homes for the foreseeable future. Here in Busia, only a short footbridge separates South Sudan from Uganda. The newcomers often arrive malnourished, thirsty, and exhausted.
I need to live here because there's a lot of shooting, looting, so we are tired. That's why we need to live here, so that we rest a little bit.
Many of these new arrivals are from Ye and other places in the Equatoria region, which has experienced intense fighting. Overall, more than 816,000 South Sudanese refugees have come to Uganda fleeing violence.
I came to Uganda because life is hard and risky. We do not move because people are killing us, chasing us to the bush, burning us inside our houses. Here, we have a secure life.
And with the violence comes hunger, another push factor.
There is no more food. People are starving. There is no medical access. There are no roads for the food to get into town. When people are bringing the food from the rural areas, the armed men collect it and the people are suffering in the town.
While life at home was difficult, refugees say, so was the journey to Uganda.
For 14 days, we walked day and night surviving on wild fruits and stagnant water.
Fabian Richard Wani trekked for 10 days with his wife, children, and a group of orphans from Ye to the Ugandan border. But he says he still has hope for his country.
And I'm looking for the future of the country. And for us to achieve the peace, we need to be godly fearing people, and the leaders should also accept their mistakes and they see the suffering of their own citizens so that the future of the country will be very bright.
Refugees in the Ugandan settlements are given a 50-meter by 50-meter plot of land to be used for shelter and cultivation, in addition to food, water, non-food items, health services, and children's education. Jill Craig, VOA News in northern Uganda.
Well, you want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa54, and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, the Gulf of Guinea is plagued by piracy and drug trafficking, and commerce destined for world markets is under threat. We'll tell you what's being done about it after the break.